Member for Calgary-Fish Creek.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to stand up and speak on Bill 23, which is the Land Assembly Project Areas Amendment Act 2011, and it should be really called replacing the screwed-up Bill 19 Land Assembly Act, which is something that this government fails to realize that Bill 19 was a bill that we stood up in the legislature and spoke against over and over and over again, and spoke up on behalf of what we consider, as our member from Fort McMurray, Buffalo, wants to always call as his bosses. And, you know, Mr. Speaker, I find it very interesting, the government's own news release that came out on the 21st of November and talks about giving amendments, giving more power to property owners, and it talks about the amendments introduced under Bill 23, the Land Assembly Project Area Amendment Act 2011, also clarifies what types of projects fall under the Act and gives property owners a clearer process when government buys land for long-term, large-scale transportation projects like the Ring Road or water reservoirs. You know, it's interesting how after 2 years they have to clarify or clear up something that was brought to their attention when we were debating Bill 19 right here in this legislature, and we tried to bring those concerns forward on behalf of Albertans. And I don't think there is one person that spoke for Bill 19, including the Minister of Transportation, that wasn't eloquently going on and on and on about it was the best bill ever since sliced bread. And there was nothing wrong with that damn piece of legislation. And the only people that had it wrong was the opposition, being the Wild Rose, and a fellow that has spent an incredible amount of time going across this province trying to clarify, and his name was Keith Wilson. You know, Mr. Speaker, quite frankly, the best thing this Assembly could do is to repeal the Land Assembly Project Area Amendment Act, which is known as Bill 19, and as I said, being replaced by the Bill 23 is being replaced. This would be a very, very simple solution to what seems to be a very complex problem. Now, Mr. Speaker, why should it be repealed? Because landowners will still be ripped off if the government needs the land. The Expropriation Act was perfectly suitable to the task of buying land for necessary projects, and the Expropriation Act was fair because it better reflected the true value of the land. Mr. Speaker, they couldn't get fair property owners. The original bill, Bill 19, had only limited projections and compensation for landowners, and they couldn't get fair compensation, let alone their day in court to make sure that they were properly compensated. Another flaw that we're finding of the proposed bill is the powers of deciding necessary project still lies behind the closed doors of Cabinet. You know, Mr. Speaker, I brought this up in question period today when I talked about the new proposed bill, whatever it is, 24, the Health Quality Council Act, and their decision-making powers behind closed doors with the Cabinet. And I have to tell you, Speaker, that my constituents have a problem with any time a Cabinet makes decisions behind closed doors, especially when it affects the public, and it has I hear the Education Minister sort of chirping in the background, and I'm sure he'll be standing up and speaking in support of Bill 23, and I look forward to hearing what he has to say about that. As I was saying, I have a problem when we start making decisions behind closed doors without the support of without the input of the public. What is really, really surprising is the fact that all of a sudden the government, in their press release and their briefing note that they provided our critic, was how they're going to go back to consultation. They're going to engage the public. They're going to talk to the public. They're going to listen to what the public says. Well, where the heck were they when we were discussing Bill 19? When there was an outcry on this particular piece of legislation. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people turned up at these consultation meetings. 200, 300, 400 people were at these meetings, and the Minister of Transportation says, well, that was because there was a confusion between Bill 19, Bill 36, and Bill 50. You know what? There was no confusion. The only people that were confused, actually, was the government. That's where the confusion was. And they were the ones that were trying to confuse a very educated public that were attending these meetings. It's too bad that the government insists on passing laws, and then they're going to consult later. The last time I heard that a good piece of legislation is usually based on consulting, listening to what Albertans have to say, and then they start bringing legislation forward. The Premier talks all the time about how she's going to consult with this, consult with that, and they're always consulting after the fact, quite frankly, when it's too late. And even the Premier has to take some blame, because she sat in that cabinet since I guess 2008, whenever she became
March 2008.
Justice Minister, and is all of a sudden all of this legislation is bad. And I'm still searching, and I have been searching for some time to find out anywhere where she spoke out publicly in any of the press in regards to the royalty, Bill 50, Bill 19, Bill 36, any of the pieces of legislation. So I'm going to, again, listen as we are in second reading of the bill. And I'm looking forward to hearing actually several members of the government speak in support of the bill, because I probably listened to the same members that spoke in front of Bill in support of Bill 19. So it'll be interesting to go back into Hansard and see what they had to say about Bill 19, and then these same members speak up in Bill 23 and talk about Bill 23 is better than Bill 19 was, and I can bet you dollars to donuts after the next election we're going to come back with Bill 31 that's going to be replacing Bill 19 plus replacing Bill 23, and then we'll have Bill 31, and then by then we might get it right. So with those short comments, Speaker, I'll sit down and I'll listen. Pay attention to his question.
Standing Order 29-2A, Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Since the member accuses me of chirping, I might as well speak to the record. A couple of questions. The member obviously has issues with the process by which decisions are made, and I know that she spent a great deal of time in Cabinet and did some good work in Cabinet as a Cabinet Minister in this government. I wanted to know whether she has made any decisions in Cabinet that now she would perceive to be as behind closed doors, and what made those decisions righteous at that point in time and wrongful now. And I also would like to ask this member, how is it possible, and in that same vein, her colleague and the member of Airdrie Chestermere eloquently spoke in this chamber in favor of the initial bill before the amendment, which is on the floor right now, and now the bill is so wrong. So if she can identify the hypocrisy between making decisions then and making decisions now, and how were they right then and the process was right then, and now all of a sudden it's so wrong, simply because she happens to be sitting on the other side of the House.
Honourable
With pleasure.
Calgary.
And I cannot tell you how much I'm glad he asked that question, because I hope I have at least 30 minutes, but I probably only have 5. Let me tell you the difference between now, where they are, and when I was in Cabinet. We listened to what Albertans had to say. We discussed it in front of the Cabinet table. Now, there's some people here who've been around since when I was there. We didn't make decisions like let's intimidate the doctors and not do anything about it. Yeah. We had an open and accountable government, quite frankly, under Premier Klein. Yeah. And that, Mr. Speaker, when we had the wonderful Premier Stelmach come in, when all hell broke out, and these guys decided that they weren't going to listen to your constituents, I was asked the question, Speaker. I'm answering. If you thought the question was out of order, then you should have caught him first instead of me.
You got it.
So, Mr. Speaker, the reason I left the government is they quit listening to the people who put them there, and that's Albertans.
Honourable for McMurray and Wood Buffalo.
Thank you, Mr.